The Urantia book, Part 1, The Central and Superuniverses. Paper 4, God's relation to the universe. God's relation to the universe. The Universal Father has an eternal purpose pertaining to the material, intellectual, and spiritual phenomena of the universe of universes, which he is executing throughout all time. God created the universes of his own free and sovereign will, and he created them in accordance with his all-wise and eternal purpose. It is doubtful whether anyone except the Paradise Deities and their highest associates really knows very much about the eternal purpose of God. Even the exalted citizens of Paradise hold very diverse opinions about the nature of the eternal purpose of the deities. It is easy to deduce that the purpose in creating the perfect central universe of Havona was purely the satisfaction of the divine nature. Havona may serve as the pattern creation for all other universes and as the finishing school for the pilgrims of time on their way to paradise. However, such a supernal creation must exist primarily for the pleasure and satisfaction of the perfect and infinite creators. This means that Urantia is built on the patterns of paradise in Havona, which is the central universe. The amazing plan for perfecting evolutionary mortals, and after their attainment of paradise and the corpse of the finality, providing further training for some undisclosed future work, does seem to be at present one of the chief concerns of the seven super-universes and their many subdivisions. But this ascension scheme for spiritualizing and training the mortals of time and space is by no means the exclusive occupation of the universe intelligences. There are indeed many other fascinating pursuits which occupy the time and enlist the energies of the celestial hosts. 1. The universe attitude of the Father. For ages, the inhabitants of Urantia have misunderstood the providence of God. There is a providence of divine outworking on your world, but it is not the childish, arbitrary, and material ministry many mortals have conceived it to be. The providence of God consists in the interlocking activities of the celestial beings and the divine spirits who, in accordance with cosmic law, unceasingly labor for the honor of God and for the spiritual advancement of his universe children. Can you not advance in your concept of God's dealing with man to that level where you recognize that the watchword of the universe is progress? And this is exactly what is going on. If we look at our history, if we look to the today's world, then we must come to the conclusion that we are spiritually stagnated and have made slow progress, that we are still are stuck on human-made traditions. Traditions, lovely and beautiful children of God, are stagnating our spiritual development and growth. We also need to come to the conclusion that we are still facing and enduring the aftermath, so to speak, of Lucifer's rebellion and the rebellion of Caligustia, our former planetary prince, because he's not there anymore. And that we are dealing with fellow brothers and sisters who have lost connection with God, with love, with light, in their heart, in their soul, in their mind, and have become so cold, so dark, and so sinister, who are trying with their uttermost best to make us believe, us the rest, believe that God does not exist. This is rebellion. These brothers and sisters are rebels who are now developing all sorts of agendas and are rolling these out in a fast pace to enforce us, the rest of God's children, in the believing that, again, God does not exist, and in the false belief that the way as they seem fit that the world needs to be, and that evolution of humankind needs to go and be, is the way that we need to go, which is not the way that we need to go, because it's not built on the foundation of the fatherhood of God and the real brotherhood of man. So, if we start to see that we are still dealing with rebels in all layers of society, and especially in the political body and in governmental institutions and globalist organizations, whom are in many cases run by rebels, and as soon as we start to see this, then we can make proper decisions. Decisions in which we decide if we are going along with this rebellism or not. And if we decide not, and to be loyal to God the Father, how difficult it will be sometimes to stay loyal to God the Father. But this is the only way. And if we start to see that we are still dealing with rebels, and say for ourselves that we do not participate in their you can say sick-minded ideas, beliefs, whom are all based on their own fantasy, then we start to withdraw ourselves from them. And as soon as more and more of us are starting to withdraw themselves from these rebels, what happens? Their entire idea collapses. And everything that they have built up, which is built up based on blood, on abuse, on corruption, on fraud, on lies, illusions, deceptions, that will collapse. So they will lose everything that they have built it up. And they lose grip. And then there can come space to slowly but surely grow into the real brotherhood of man. Because this one world government idea is in far future an idea that God really wants to create. But this one world government is based on the real brotherhood of man, based on the foundation of the fatherhood of God. And so it will be a one world government structure in which every creature has still its free will. Now we see a so-called, by dark, sinister, cold-hearted humans who think that they can outroll this one world government right now in a rapid pace, but their idea of one world government is completely based on service to self, on selfishness, on getting more false power and having control over all species on this planet, not only humans, also animals, nature, and so on. And is not based on having humans still having their free will. The opposite is going on. They are rapidly trying to steal away the free will from their fellow brothers and sisters, and they do this in very they do this in a disguised form, with a lot of lies, packaged, in which, unfortunately, too many brothers and sisters are freely giving their free will away and into the hands of these very dark, sinister, cold-hearted fellow brothers and sisters whom have lost every contact with God, with life, with love. And so with the path of light and life, through long ages, the human race had and has struggled to reach its present position. Throughout all these millenniums, Providence has been working out the plan of progressive evolution. The two thoughts are not opposed in practice, only in man's mistaken concepts. Divine providence is never arrayed in opposition to true human progress, either temporal or spiritual. Providence is always consistent with the unchanging and perfect nature of the supreme lawmaker. God is faithful, and all his commandments, between quotation marks, are just. His faithfulness is established in the very skies. Forever, O Lord, your word is settled in heaven. Your faithfulness is to all generations. You have established the earth, and it abides. He is a faithful creator. There is no limitation of the forces and personalities which the Father may use to uphold his purpose and sustain his creatures. God the Father is also known as the great upholder. The eternal God is our refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Behold, he who keeps us shall neither slumber nor sleep. We know that all things work together for good to those who love God. For the eyes of the Lord are over the righteous, and his ears are open to their prayers. God upholds, in quotation marks, all things by the word of his power. And when new worlds are born, he, in quotation marks, sends forth his sons, and they are created. God not only creates, but he preserves them all, in quotation marks. God constantly upholds all things material and all beings spiritual. The universes are eternally stable. There is stability in the midst of apparent instability. There is an underlying order and security in the midst of the energy upheavals and the physical cataclysms of the starry realms. The Universal Father has not withdrawn from the management of the universes. He is not an inactive deity. If God should retire as the present upholder of all creation, there would immediately occur a universal collapse. And this is something that is being falsely preached by a group of believers from Australia who believe that God is dead, and it all is about, in this case, Yahusha. Well, that is also something, it's all based on a primitive understanding of God the Father. But this is absolutely a false teaching, because again, if God would be dead, then I wouldn't sit here. Then everything would have been immediately collapsed. Immediate. And then there was no universe any longer. Except for of all creation, there would immediately occur a universal collapse. So except for God, there would be... Wait a minute. I'll read it again, because I missed the track here. Sorry. If God should retire as the present upholder of all creation, there would immediately occur a universal collapse. Except for God, there would be no such thing as reality. So this whole idea that God would be dead or does not exist anymore, that is a false teaching. At this very moment, as during the remote ages of the past and in the eternal future, God continues to uphold the divine reach, extends around the circle of eternity. The universe is not wound up like a clock to run just so long and then cease to function. All things are constantly being renewed. The Father unceasingly pours forth energy, light, and life. The work of God is literal as well as spiritual. He stretches out the north over the empty space and hangs the earth upon nothing. A being of my order is able to discover ultimate harmony and to detect far-reaching and profound coordination in the routine affairs of universe administration. Much that seems disjointed and haphazard to the mortal mind appears orderly and constructive to my understanding. But there is very much going on in the universe that I do not fully comprehend. I have long been a student of and am more or less conversant with the recognized forces, energies, minds, morontias, spirits, and personalities of the local universes and the super universes. I have a general understanding of how these agencies and personalities operate, and I am intimately familiar with the workings of the accredited spirit intelligences of the grand universe, notwithstanding my knowledge of the phenomena of the universes. I am constantly confronted with cosmic reactions which I can not fully fathom. I am continually encountering apparently fortuitous conspiracies of the interassociation of forces, energies, intellects, and spirits, which I cannot satisfactorily explain. I am entirely competent to trace out and to analyze the working of all phenomena directly resulting from the functioning of the Universal Father, the Eternal Son, the Infinite Spirit, and, to a large extent, the Isle of Paradise. My perplexity is occasioned by encountering what appears to be the performance of perplexity. Their mysterious coordinates the three absolutes of personality. These absolutes seem to supersede matter, to transcend mind, and to supervene spirit. I am constantly confused and often perplexed by my inability to comprehend these complex transactions which I attribute to the presence and performances of the unqualified absolute, the deity absolute, and the universal absolute. These absolutes must be the not fully revealed presence abroad in the universe, which in the phenomena of space potency and in the function of other super ultimates render it impossible for physicists, philosophers, or even religionists to predict with certainty as to just how the primordials of force, concept, or spirit will respond to demands made in a complex reality situation involving supreme adjustments and ultimate values. There's also an organic unity in the universes of time and space which seems to underlie the whole fabric of cosmic events. This living presence of the evolving of the evolving supreme being, this immanence of the projected incomplete, is inexplicably manifested ever and anon by what appears to be an amazingly fortuitous coordination of apparently unrelated universe happenings. This must be the function of providence, the realm of the Supreme Being, and the conjoined actor, which is the infinite spirit. I am inclined to believe that it is this far-flung and generally unrecognizable control of the coordination and interassociation of all phases and forms of universe activity that causes such a variegated and apparently hopelessly confused medley of physical, mental, moral, and spiritual phenomena so unerringly to work out to the glory of God and for the good of men and angels. But in the larger sense, the apparent so-called, between quotation marks, accidents of the cosmos are undoubtedly a part of the finite drama on the time-space adventure of the infinite in his eternal manipulation of the absolutes. Second, God and nature. Nature is, in a limited sense, the physical habit of God. The conduct or action of God is qualified and provisionally modified by the experiential plans and the evolutionary patterns of a local universe. A constellation, a system, or a planet. God acts in accordance with a well-defined, unchanging, immutable law throughout the wide spreading master universe, but he modifies the patterns of his actions so as to contribute to the coordinate and balanced conduct of each universe, constellation, system, planet, and personality in accordance with the local objects, aims, and plans of the finite projects of evolutionary unfolding. Therefore, nature, as mortal man understands it, presents the underlying foundation and fundamental background of a changeless deity and his immutable laws, modified, fluctuating because of, and experiencing upheavals through the working of the local plans, purposes, patterns, and conditions which have been inaugurated and are being carried out by the local universe, constellation, system, and planetary forces and personalities. For example, as God's laws have been ordained in Nebadon, the name of our local universe, Urantia is part of, and the system headquarters of Urantia is known as Satania, which is part of the constellation Norlatia Dec, of which Urantia is part of. They are modified by the plans established by the Creator Son and Creative Spirit of this local universe, and in addition to all this, the operation of these laws has been further influenced by the errors defaults and insurrections of certain beings resident upon your planet and belonging to your immediate planetary system of Satania. In this, they refer to those who were part of the Lucifer and Caligustia rebellion. Yeah, and so the Lucifer rebellion and Caligustia was our former planetary prince. He also went along with Lucifer's rebellion. So we are still dealing with creatures, beings, brothers, sisters, whom are still part of this rebellion and are still rebellious and are the surviving rebels, so to speak, of that time. Or you can say descendants of the first rebels. Nature is a time-space resultant of two cosmic factors. First, the immutability, perfection, and rectitude of Paradise Deity. And second, the experimental plans, executive blunders, insurrectionary errors, incompleteness of development, and imperfection of wisdom of the extra paradise creatures from the highest to the lowest. Nature therefore carries uniform, unchanging, majestic, and marvelous thread of perfection from the circle of eternity. But in each universe, on each planet, and in each individual life, this nature is modified, qualified, and perchance merit by the acts, the mistakes, and the disloyalties of the creatures of the evolutionary systems and universes, and therefore must nature ever be of a changing mood. Whimsical, withal, though stable, underneath and varied, in accordance with the operating procedures of a local universe. Nature is the perfection of paradise divided by the incompletion, evil, and sin of the unfinished universes. This quotation is thus expressive of both the perfect and the partial, of both the eternal and the temporal. Continuing evolution modifies nature by augmenting the content of paradise perfection and by diminishing the content of the evil, error, and disharmony of relative reality. God is not personally present in nature or in any of the forces of nature, for the phenomenon of nature is the superimposition of the imperfections of progressive evolution and sometimes the consequences of insurrectionary rebellion upon the paradise foundations of God's universal law. as it appears on such a world as Urantia. Nature can never be the adequate expression, the true representation, the faithful portrayal of an all-wise and infinite God. Nature on your world is a qualification of the laws of perfection by the evolutionary plans of the local universe. What a travesty to worship nature because it is, in a limited, qualified sense, pervaded by God, because it is a phase of the universal and therefore divine power. Nature also is a manifestation of the unfinished, the incomplete, the imperfect outworkings of the development, growth, and progress of a universe experiment in cosmic evolution. The apparent defects of the natural world are not indicative of any such corresponding defects in the character of God. Rather are such observed imperfections merely the inevitable stop moments in the exhibition of the ever-moving reel of infinity picturization. It is these very defect interruptions of perfection continuity which make it possible for the finite mind of material man to catch a fleeting glimpse of divine reality in time and space. The material manifestations of divinity appear defective to the evolutionary mind of man only because mortal man persists in viewing the phenomena of nature through natural eyes. Human vision, unaided by morontia mota or by revelation, its compensatory substitute on the worlds of time. And nature is marred, her beautiful face is scared, her features are seared by the rebellion, the misconduct, the misthinking of the myriads of creatures who are a part of nature, but who have contributed to her disfigurement in time. No, nature is not God. Nature is not an object of worship. 3. Unchanging character. All too long has man thought of God as one like himself. God is not, never was, and never will be jealous of man or any other being in the universe of universes. So with this said, we need to question mark all the things in the Old Testament. What are they? Are they the wrong interpreted images and understandings of the human mind that started to live a life on its own, that eventually got worshipped by man himself, who is worshipping his own misunderstood in the mind created images, that man himself created from wood, silver, stone, and started to worship, we need to question this, knowing that the Creator's Son intended man to be the masterpiece of the planetary creation. And there's another thing. How can people come with the understanding that God is good and God is all loving? And at the same time, these same people are preaching about a God of revenge and push and pull, which means retracting and rejection, about a God that punishes and that you have to fear God. So who is this God that is being talked about in the Old Testament? Well, that is not, obviously not, the God of true love, life, kindness, goodness, truth, and beauty. Knowing that the Creator's Son intended man to be the masterpiece of the planetary creation, to be the ruler of all the earth. So we were and are, still are actually, stewards over this planet known as Urantia. And that means that we take care of this planet that God has entrusted us with, and that we become the vessels and the instruments of God, through which God can perfect this planet Urantia into such heights of beauty, truth, and kindness that is the same as it is in paradise, known as Havona. And also to be the ruler of all the earth, the side of his being dominated by his own baser passions, the spectacle of his bowing down before idols of wood, stone, gold, and selfish ambition. These sordid scenes steer God and his sons to be jealous for man, but never of him. So this means that we need to stop seeing this, because actually we are bringing damage and harm in this way, especially to those of our universal brothers and all those whom are part of the creation process of this universe and all universes. And it's not fair to speak of them in this way, because all these creatures are love, truth, beauty, and kindness. The universe actually does not contain any evil species. They all are carrying the deep love of God in them. They are all carrying out love, truth, kindness, and beauty. And they are all there to help us, those ascending mortals of time and space. The eternal God is incapable of wrath and anger in the sense of these human emotions, and as man understands such reactions. So what has been done is that our forefathers have projected their emotions onto God and have made a God image that is human-like. And this is the God image that is still preached and worshipped unto the day of today. These sentiments are mean and despicable. They are hardly worthy of being called human, much less divine, and such attitudes are utterly foreign to the perfect nature and gracious character of the universal Father. Very much of the difficulty which Urantia mortals have in understanding God is due to the far-reaching consequences of the Lucifer rebellion and the Caligastia betrayal. And I want to say that Caligastia was our former planetary prince. And I also want to say, everywhere in the Bible where you read the word devil, you need to fill in Caligastia, because actually that is meant with the devil. On worlds not segregated by sin, the evolutionary races are able to formulate far better ideas of the universal Father. They suffer less from confusion, distortion, and perversion of concept. So what is being spoken of here is that we Urantians are still dealing with a high level of confusion, distortion, and perversion of the God concept. And this is still preached unto the day of today, and unfortunately many people are preaching this to other fellow brothers and sisters in the hope to bring them back to God. Yeah? But actually they are preaching a word that they need to question mark. They are preaching from a book that is a book that we need to question mark. God repents of nothing he has ever done, now does, or ever will do. He is all-wise as well as all-powerful. Man's wisdom grows out of the trials and errors of human experience. God's wisdom consists in the unqualified perfection of his infinite universe insight, and this divine foreknowledge effectively directs the creative free will. So the universal Father never does anything that causes subsequent sorrow or regret. But this is an image that the Old Testament is portraying about God. So we get a false portrait of whom God the Father is in the Old Testament. The Old Testament is giving us a false image about God the Father. But the will creatures of the planning and making of his creator personalities in the outlying universes by their unfortunate choosing sometimes occasion emotions of divine sorrow in the personalities of their creator parents. But though the Father neither makes mistakes, harbors regrets, nor experiences sorrows, he is a being with a Father's affection, and his heart is undoubtedly grieved when his children fail to attain the spiritual levels they are capable of reaching with the assistance which has been so freely provided by the spiritual attainment plans and the mortal ascension policies of the universes. And I also want to say this. Look up for yourselves the Gilgamesh story, and then read the Ark of Noah story, and you will see that the Ark of Noah story is completely based on the Gilgamesh story. So we, lovely brothers and sisters, we need to question mark what is being spoken of in this whole book known as so-called Holy Book Bible. And we need to acknowledge that there is a lot of errors in it, and a type of storytelling that is completely based on misperceptions, misunderstandings about whom God the Father is. The infinite goodness of the Father is beyond the comprehension of the finite mind of time. Hence must there always be afforded a contrast with comparative evil, not sin, for the effective exhibition of all phases of relative goodness. Perfection of divine goodness can be discerned by mortal imperfection of insight only because it stands in contrastive association with relative imperfection in the relationships of time and matter, in the motions of space. The character of God is infinitely superhuman. Therefore must such a nature of divinity be personalized, as in the divine sons, before it can even be faith grasped by the finite mind of man. 4. The realization of God. God is the only stationary, self-contained, and changeless being in the whole universe of universes, having no outside, no beyond, no past, and no future. So that is why, as I always have known it and experienced it, as we have to live in accordance with the flow of God that is flowing through us, which is known as the moment. God lives in the moment. So all this idea of future and past actually does not exist. For God is there just the moment in which he does his things, and then he goes flowing into the next moment, into the next move. God is purposive energy, creative spirit, and absolute will, and these are self-existent and universal. Since God is self-existent, he is absolutely independent. The very identity of God is inimical to change. I, the Lord, change not. God is immutable, but not until you achieve paradise status can you even begin to understand how God can pass from simplicity to complexity, from identity to variation, from quiescence to motion, from infinity to finitude, from the divine to the human, and from unity to duality and triunity. And God can thus modify the manifestations of his absoluteness, because divine immutability does not imply immobility. God has will. He is will. God is the being of absolute self-determination. There are no limits to his universe reactions, save those which are self-imposed, and his free will acts are conditioned only by those divine qualities and perfect attributes which inherently characterize his eternal nature. Therefore, is God related to the universe as the being of final goodness plus a free will of creative infinity. The Father Absolute is the creator of the central and perfect universe, and the father of all other creators. And if you hear background noise, it's because of my two kitties of 12 weeks young. Personality, goodness, and numerous other characteristics God shares with man and other beings, but infinity of will is his alone. God is limited in his creative acts only by the sentiments of his eternal nature and by the dictates of his infinite wisdom. God personally chooses only that which is infinitely perfect. Hence the supernal perfection of the central universe, and while the Creator Sons fully share his divinity, even phases of his absoluteness, they are not altogether limited by that finality of wisdom which directs the Father's infinity of will. Hence, in the Michael order of sonship, and Michael is the being that is our master, sovereign ruler of this local universe, Nebadon, of which Orantia is part of, and we know Michael better as Jesus of Nazareth, and he is part of the Michael order, the order of sonship. Creative free will be so. Hence, in the Michael order of sonship, creative free will becomes even more active, wholly divine, and well nigh ultimate, if not absolute. The Father is infinite and eternal, but to deny the possibility of his volitional self-limitation amounts to a denial of this very concept of his volitional absoluteness. God's absoluteness pervades all 7 levels of universe reality, and the whole of this absolute nature is subject to the relationship of the Creator to his universe creature family. Precision may characterize Trinitarian justice in the universe of universes, but in all his vast family relationship with the creatures of time, the God of universe is governed by divine sentiment. First and last, eternally, the infinite God is a Father of all the possible titles by which he might appropriately be known. I have been instructed to portray the God of all creation as the universal Father. In God the Father, free will performances are not ruled by power, nor are they guided by intellect alone. The divine personality is defined as consisting in spirit and manifesting himself to the universes as love. Therefore, in all his personal relations with the creature personalities of the universes, the first source and center is always and consistently a loving Father. God is a Father in the highest sense of the term. He is eternally motivated by the perfect idealism of divine love, and that tender nature finds its strongest expression and greatest satisfaction in loving and being loved. So that is the message, that we need to love him because he loves to be loved and being loved. In science, God is the first cause. In religion, the universal and loving Father. In philosophy, the one being who exists by himself, not dependent on any other being for existence, but beneficently conferring reality of existence on all things and upon all other beings. But it requires revelation to show that the first cause of science and the self-existent unity of philosophy are the God of religion, full of mercy and goodness, and pledged to effect the eternal survival of his children on earth. We crave the concept of the infinite, but we worship the experience idea of God. Our anywhere and anytime capacity to grasp the personality and divinity factors of our highest concept of deity the consciousness of a victorious human life on earth is born of that creature faith which dares to challenge each recurring episode of existence. When confronted with the awful spectacle of human limitations by the unfailing declaration, "Even if I cannot do this, there lives in me one who can and will do it," a part of the Father Absolute of the universe of universes. And that is the victory which overcomes the world, even your faith. 5. And the last point of this paper, 4. Erroneous ideas of God. Religious tradition is the imperfectly preserved record of the experiences of the God-knowing man of past ages. But such records are untrustworthy as guides for religious living or as the source of true information about the universal Father. Such ancient beliefs have been invariably altered by the fact that primitive man was a myth maker. So this means that the Bible, the apocryphal books, the pseudo-apocryphal books, all these books theologians are using, and other books marked as holy, we need to question mark all of them. And we need to see that most of them are filled with myths. And some can contain gems, but let us read these books with the help and understanding of the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of truth, and with the adjuster, God the Father fragment in us. And then we will see where the gems of truth are hidden in these myths. One of the greatest sources of confusion on Urantia concerning the nature of God grows out of the failure of your sacred books, so-called sacred books, clearly to distinguish between the personalities of the Paradise Trinity and between Paradise Deity and the local universe creators and administrators. During the past dispensations of partial understanding, your priests and prophets failed clearly to differentiate between planetary princes, system sovereigns, constellation fathers, creator sons, super-universe rulers, the Supreme Being, and the Universal Father. Many of the messages of subordinate personalities, such as life carriers and various orders of angels, have been in your records presented as coming from God Himself. Urantian religious thoughts still confuses the associate personalities of deity with the universal Father Himself, so that all are included under one appellation. So which this is what this is saying is that the many things that we read in the Bible, in the apocryphal books, in the pseudo-apocryphal books, and books likewise, are all described as coming from God, which is not always the case. Most things are coming from several angelic celestial beings and or system sovereigns, planetary princes, constellation fathers, and so on. All right. The people of Urantia continue to suffer from the influence of primitive concepts of God, which we still have in this time and frame of 2024. We are still being influenced by primitive concepts of God. The gods who go on a rampage in the storm, who shake the earth in their wrath and strike down men in their anger, who inflict their judgments of displeasure in times of famine and flood. These are the gods of primitive religion. They are not the gods who live and rule the universes, because they are pure based, and their lives are purely based on the fatherhood of God, and thus on love, kindness, goodness, truth, and beauty. Such concepts are a relic of the times when men supposed that the universe was under the guidance and domination of the whims of such imaginary gods. But mortal man is beginning to realize that he lives in a realm of comparative law and order as far as concerns the administrative policies and conduct of the supreme creators and the supreme controllers. The barbarous idea of appeasing an angry God, of propitiating an offended Lord, of winning the favor of deity through sacrifices and penance, and even by the shedding of blood, represents a religion wholly puerile and primitive, a philosophy unworthy of an enlightened age of science and truth. Such beliefs are utterly repulsive to the celestial beings and the divine rulers who serve and reign in the universes. It is an affront to God to believe, hold, or teach that innocent blood must be shed in order to win his favor, or to divert the fictitious divine wrath. So it's all a fiction. So we really need to see that the entire book, the Bible, and especially the Old Testament, on all the apocryphal books and pseudo-apocryphal books and all these books that are likewise, all this wrath speaking is a fictitious thing. The Hebrews believed that, in quotation marks, without the shedding of blood there could be no remission of sin. They had not found deliverance from the old and pagan idea that the gods could not be appeased except by the sight of blood. Though Moses did make a distinct advance when he forbade human sacrifices and substituted therefore, in the primitive minds of his childlike Bedouin followers, the ceremonial sacrifice of animals. But these people completely lost themselves in animal sacrifices too, because it's absurd to kill thousands of animals for the people's sin, for the sins that the tribe or the peoples of the tribe have done, or the peoples of the nation have done. They completely missed the real understanding of whom God the Father is. And unfortunately we are still dealing with this, because there are still animals being sacrificed. And the sad part of it all is that in Israel right now, for several decades, they are instigating the Levi priest order again. So what is going on, lovely brothers and sisters, lovely children of God? What is happening is that those brothers and sisters among us whom have grown cold in their heart, soul, and mind are now trying to bring the rest of us back into this primitiveness by setting up again the whole Levi priesthood again, the Aaronic, what is it? Aaron priesthood, Levi priesthood, because Aaron was from the Levi priesthood, to reinstigate that priesthood again. And they bring heifer cows back into the game again. And so they are bringing back this primitive concept again. What the heck is going on? Why is it that so many of God's children are falling prey for these delusionists? For these brothers and sisters who completely lost connection with God, with life, with love, and have grown so cold-hearted in their mind, in their soul, and in their heart, who try to enforce the rest of us back into this primitiveness. Because they still do not understand God the Father. Better said, the majority of them are declaring to the rest of us that God doesn't exist and is dead. So that we will throw out God out of the window and out of our lives and become like them. We need to understand that we are still dealing with rebels. And we need to understand this. And if we start to understand that we are still dealing with rebels, then we can make decision in which we decide, are we going along with these rebels, yes or no? And if not, the more of us whom are withdrawing ourselves from these rebellious sisters and brothers and sisters, the more of us are withdrawing from them, what is going to happen? They will lose everything that they have created. All that they have stood for, believed in, have created will collapse. And have tried to enforce us into, and have tried to enforce us to believe the same things that they believe and stand for. That will collapse. And this is the best decision you can make, but you need to understand that you are still dealing with rebellious brothers and sisters. And if you start to understand this, then you can also build compassion for them. Because they are still God's children, whom are so completely lost and in such an utter state of confusion and disillusion and illusion and deceivement and what else, and have through this grown so cold-hearted in their heart, in their soul, in their mind. So if you start to understand this, then you can make proper decision. Are you still wanting to participate with these rebellious brothers and sisters, or are you going to withdraw yourselves from them? And this is exactly what is meant with "Come out of her, my people." This is what it is meant with "come out of her, my people." Come out of this rebelliousness and start to withdraw yourselves from all these rebellious brothers and sisters who still are stuck in a primitive mindset. Unfortunately. And if you are coming back to God the Father and stay loyal to Him by following His ways, doing His will. And what is doing His will? Doing His will is that you do what God has laid upon you to do. By asking God what the plan is that He has with you. And to ask God to unfold this plan step by step to you and then you can start following this plan. And if you start following this plan, then God will give you everything that is needed to make you follow this plan. So this is also meant with seek God first, and the rest shall be given to you. The bestowal of a paradise sun on your world was inherent in the situation of closing a planetary age. It was inescapable, and it was not made necessary for the purpose of winning the favor of God. This bestowal also happened to be the final personal act of a creator son, which is a Michael's son, coming from the order of Michael's, in the long adventure of earning the experiential sovereignty of his universe. So, the Michael, creator, paradise creator's son, that we know of as Jesus of Nazareth, was here, this Michael was here on Urantia to finish off his 7th bestowal. And with this, to get his sovereignty of being a master, sovereign ruler over his own universe. Jesus, better known as Michael, never was here on Urantia to die for our sins. That is a misnomer. That is a highly misunderstood concept by man. What a travesty upon the infinite character of God, this teaching that his fatherly heart, in all its austere coldness and hardness, was so untouched by the misfortunes and sorrows of his creatures that his tender mercies were not forthcoming until he saw his blameless son bleeding and dying upon the cross of Calvary. In the local universe and beyond, this planet Urantia is also known as the world of the cross. But the inhabitants of Urantia are to find deliverance from these ancient errors and pagan superstitions respecting the nature of the Universal Father. The revelation of the truth about God is appearing, and the human race is destined to know the Universal Father in all that beauty of character and loveliness of attributes so magnificently portrayed by the Creator's Son, who sojourned on Urantia as the Son of Man and the Son of God. This paper has been presented to us by a divine counselor of Uversa. And I highly recommend you to buy a copy of this Urantia book yourselves too, and to read through it, to study it, and to ask the assistance of the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of Truth, and the adjuster, which is the God the Father fragment in us, to ask all of them to help you while you are reading yourselves through this book, while you are studying yourselves through this book. And there are Urantia study groups, please look up for one or maybe more in your neighborhood, in your local area, and participate in these study groups, and so you help yourselves to get a deeper and deeper understanding of what this Urantia book, which is the fifth epical revelation that God the Father has given to us to set the record straight for once and for all here on Urantia. And also, it has been given to us to prepare ourselves for the next step in our ascension journey that will be in the first mentioned world. And the more we read this book and study this book, the more we fill our mind and thus renew our mind, soul, and heart with this revelation, the bigger the chances are there that you don't have to be part of a special class of beings that have not done this work while they were in the flesh. And the chances are there then that eventually you could become one of the beings that presents this knowledge to them in one of these special classes. It depends on how far you have come also yourself in reading and studying this book. It's if you get this book when you get 60, okay, it will be a challenge, but it's not impossible. Totally not. So, but the main aspect of it is that God the Father has given us this fifth epical revelation to set the record straight here on Urantia, and also to give us the opportunity to prepare us for the next step in our ascension journey. All right, thank you so much for listening, and I wish you all a beautiful day, and God bless you.